Joining us now with more is Fox News contributor and former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. Mr. Speaker, thanks a lot for joining us tonight. The Democrats have tried this before. You've seen the McGovern candidacy, the Dukakis candidacy, the Mondale candidacy, and Mr. Speaker, they all have one thing in common: going down in flames with this radical agenda that they had. Has the country changed that much that Bernie Sanders could actually have a shot of being president of the United States?
Well, look, I think we're a country that elected an actor who made movies with chimpanzees. We elected a nuclear engineer peanut farmer. We elected a guy from Arkansas who had no particular claim to be ready to be president. So, a wide range of people have won the presidency. And I think those of us who watched in amazement as Donald Trump wiped out 16 competitors before taking on Clinton and beating her, I don't want to be presumptive. So I would say that Sanders has a very distant possibility of winning, but he has a much greater likelihood of taking the entire Democratic ticket down, ending Pelosi's speakership. He's the greatest gift to Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader in the House, you could possibly hope for, because Sanders really is the true Democratic Party. He represents all the big government ideas, all the radicalism, all of the weird foreign policy that is at the heart of the Democratic Party. And I think the contrast between President Trump and his record, particularly on the economy, but just in general. I mean, think about the Trump judges and then ask, can Sanders give us a list of people he would nominate to the Supreme Court? No. They would all be radicals. So it could end up being one of the great historic campaigns in American history.
Well, I think, given that the McGovern candidacy and, like I said, Dukakis and Mondale went down in flames in an era where we didn't have Fox News, didn't have any kind of alternative media. If you didn't hear it from Walter Cronkite or David Brinkley, it didn't happen. Now we have this alternative media environment where facts actually matter. I just can't envision a candidacy like Sanders, if he were to get the nod, surviving, given the fact, Mr. Speaker, that it's going to get out there that his name is on a bill that would quite literally cancel people's insurance plans. I mean, as we saw with the culinary union fight in Nevada, this isn't even popular with union Democrats who can't stand Bernie Sanders' ideas. I mean, this has got to be a problem for him if he were to win the nomination.
Well, I think a lot of Democrats, including Mayor Bloomberg, have tried to make that case. The challenge you have is something very different. Bernie Sanders essentially is a bumper sticker. It is a, gosh, I'd love a nice future where I didn't have to pay back my student loans, where everything was free, where somebody took care of me. Sanders represents, in that sense, a sort of a myth. And it's very hard to fight a myth with facts. Now, everybody who's open to facts will peel away ultimately, and a campaign which laid out what Sanders really would mean, I think would be devastating. But if you look, I'm working on a new book for this summer, laying out the choice in this campaign, and I'm devoting an entire chapter to what I'm calling the Radical 200 in the House, because when you start going down the list, this isn't 5 or 10 or 15 people. This isn't AOC and the squad. The entire Democratic Party is marching off a left-wing cliff, and doing so with bills. There's a bill, for example, that would raise the FICA tax, your Social Security tax, by 19%, and that has 206 Democrats signed on. I mean, something's going on in their party where they've lost all touch with reality.
Yeah, and I think the problem I have with it personally is Bernie Sanders is a fraud. He's lying to people. He keeps talking about this mythical idea of democratic socialism. There's no such thing. And he keeps citing examples, Mr. Speaker, that don't exist. He keeps saying, in other words, he keeps citing Denmark and Scandinavian countries. We need to be more socialist like the Danes. Well, when you actually ask people in Denmark, like one of their former leaders, Lars Rasmussen, who was actually offended by the characterization of Denmark, they're a market economy, it doesn't work. I mean, he's making this up. He's a genuine radical, but he's using non-radical examples like Denmark and Scandinavia to sell ideas I believe he really believes in. Hard socialism, not this democratic socialism nonsense he keeps talking about.
Look, anybody who honeymoons in the Soviet Union and who said that John F. Kennedy made him sick because Kennedy refused to work with Fidel Castro. I mean, you go back through Sanders' entire career, he's very hard left. He's somewhere between a genuine communist and a very, very hardcore socialist. But he's also been around a long time. He's learned the game. He's pretty good at shading things. The problem he's going to have, as any Democrat will have, is that when you run into Donald Trump, you're running into somebody who's willing to go head on, who uses the power of his enormous Twitter following, which is larger than the three networks combined. And I think that ultimately, as I said a while ago, Bernie Sanders literally could be exactly the choice the country should face, because then we have the real debate. I mean, do you want to go down the road of Zimbabwe and Venezuela and Cuba, every failed centralized state in the world? Or do you want to continue creating jobs, have the best economy we've ever had, lowest unemployment rate for African Americans and Latinos? You know, that's a pretty clear choice, and it would be healthy for America to get it out in the open.
No, I agree. Let's duke it out. Let's have that fight. Speaker Gingrich, thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. In just a few short hours.